he'd do seminars, he would scream at the top of his lungs every once in a while, "Pay attention!" Which I didn't do right now because I didn't want to break anybody's eardrum. But he would just scream, "Pay attention!" So, pay attention. Here are the instructions. What you do is you send an email. You send an email to, where am I sending an email? Randy, is it support? Yeah. You send an email to support@ktradionetwork.com. You send an email to support@ktradionetwork.com. Support@ktradionetwork.com. You send an email. In the subject line, you write the word Wednesday. Wednesday in the subject line. Wednesday. Then in the body, you have to put a secret code word, and the secret code word is Gerber, the evil baby company that lies to you. Gerber. Poisoning your children with chemical dyes. Gerber. All you have to do is put Gerber. Now, if you don't follow the instructions, we just simply throw your email away without any callback, and if you never win, you may wonder why. So the instructions are very clear. Number one, you send an email to support@ktradionetwork.com. In the subject line, put Wednesday. In the subject line, put Wednesday. Next, in the body, you put the secret code word Gerber, and then just put down your name. We'll respond to you. You don't need anything else. That's pretty much it, right? So do that, and that's by midnight Central Standard Time. Midnight Central Standard Time, you'll get that. And actually, for our West Coast listeners, we'll do it midnight Pacific Standard Time. So midnight Pacific Standard Time is the deadline. If it comes in a minute afterwards, we just delete it and throw it away. We take these, and then we just randomly draw one, and you'll be announced tomorrow. We also have a section on our website at ktradionetwork.com where you can check out all the winners. $500 winners. Brandy, are the winners happy? Yeah, they're very happy. And it's amazing the stories, how people are virtually using what we teach them as a gym member in the law of attraction, how to manifest this. So that's really, really cool. All right, so what I want to talk about, I had this conversation with one of my billionaire buddies last night who called me. It was a really long conversation, and you know who I'm talking about. He's just quick. I mean, fast. So if I'm on the phone with him for an hour and a half, I'm getting like 8 hours worth of information because it's condensed right to the point. He had this meeting. A buddy of his, one of the richest guys in America, had a party in New York, and he says, "KT, every billionaire was there." And my buddy was there, and he got so much information, inside data. So he shared with me what's happening, and we've been talking about this for the last year and a half, but things are accelerating. And I'll just give you a couple of things that are kind of looming on the horizon, not to scare you or frighten you, but to give you just a heads up, so you should start taking some action now to start protecting yourself and your family. And the good news is, if none of this stuff happens, because the future is constantly changing, if none of this stuff happens, if you do some things anyways, you're just better off anyway. So it's like no dramas at all. But look, before I talk about that meeting and that call, I want to preface it with this article that came out, published on Fox News. And it says, baby boomers will force economic catastrophe. And this goes on to say, and I'm going to paraphrase this, that the first baby boomers turn 65 this year. Now, what that means is we have this enormous pool of people. The largest body of people in America are baby boomers. They're starting to turn 65 this year. So starting this year, each and every month, more and more people are going to be retiring. And what this means is around 10,000 people are going to be retiring each and every day. Now, that means when a person retires, they stop paying taxes and they start collecting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. So instead of putting money into the system, they start taking money and benefits out of the system. Do you see where I'm going? Folks, no one will show you the math, but here's what a guy says. And who is this guy? He's Doug Holtz, the former director of the Congressional Budget Office. This is the number one guy in America that knows where the money's coming and going. He knows the accounting. He knows how much money the Treasury has, what its bills are, what its liabilities are, what its obligations are. He knows what the revenue is. He knows what the revenue has been and what it's potentially going to be. And here's what he says. The federal government's going to be bleeding money as the baby boomer retires. Now get this. Pay attention. He says, this is the number one guy at the Congressional Budget Office in the United States of America. He says, we, the federal government, know we cannot pay all the Social Security and Medicare benefits that we promised. Did you hear that? This guy says that we, the federal government, know. Internally, we know this, but we're not sharing it with anybody else because it would cause panic. He says, we know that the federal government cannot, it's impossible to pay all the Social Security and Medicare benefits promised. He goes on to say, now pay attention to this. He goes on to say this. There isn't enough money in the world to do that. There isn't enough money on planet Earth to pay all of the Social Security and Medicare benefits promised. Folks, Social Security and Medicare are the biggest Ponzi scams ever created on planet Earth. They can't pay the money. There's not enough money in the world to do it. There's not enough money in the world to do it. Let me tell you what else happened. The Treasury Secretary of the United States, Tim Geithner, he went on television and said something. Nobody is picking up on this. I'm telling you, I can't find a news organization that's picking up on this. Tim Geithner, the Secretary of Treasury of the United States, went on television and said, and he said this, if we don't extend or raise the debt ceiling. Now I'm going to tell you what he said, then I'm going to put it in English. Tim Geithner, the Secretary of Treasury, said if we don't raise the debt ceiling in America, we will default on our debts. Therefore, we must raise the debt ceiling. That's what he said. Let me put that in English. Tim Geithner said, if we don't get another loan, if we don't borrow more money, if the federal government doesn't borrow more money, we won't be able to pay the interest on our debt, and we will be in default of our debt. Therefore, we right now are, in effect, technically bankrupt and insolvent. The United States Secretary of the Treasury went on record and said the U.S. government today is insolvent. We can't even pay the interest on our debt unless we borrow more money. Now, folks, I had 6 of the top geniuses in the world working on this for the last 2 months, one at MIT. And here's what the numbers came in, all slightly different, but all the same. The same conclusion is this. If every person in America in 2011 was taxed 100% of their income, we still couldn't pay off our debt. Never mind pay our bills. Do you understand that? If you look at all of the obligations that the United States has, there isn't enough money on planet Earth that can pay all of the money that the United States government owes and has promised to pay. There isn't enough money on planet Earth. Do you understand? This is a house of cards, folks. What's going to happen? Well, the good news is this. I got good news. I don't want you to feel bad. If you look at a country like Yugoslavia, in fact, tomorrow I'm going to try to talk about Yugoslavia because what happened in Yugoslavia, by the way, Yugoslavia used to be a country. Some people even know. I used to date somebody who was from Yugoslavia. But today it's no longer Yugoslavia. It's Montenegro, it's Croatia, it's Serbia. It's been broken up. But when Yugoslavia was a country, They were in the exact same position that we are. They had a slightly different thing because the U.S. has one ace. The one ace that the U.S. has is the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency. That's ace number one, which means we can just print as much money as we want. The second ace is that the U.S. dollar is used to buy oil globally. But let me tell you what's going to happen. And this is from my meeting, my call with my friend last night. It is now clear. Now, by the way, the future is always changing. Remember that. Based on the global thinking. The New Age person would call it the global consciousness. No. It's basically the mass thinking of the population. And some other things as well. So the future is always changing. But right now, it looks pretty darn certain that the U.S. dollar is no longer going to be the world reserve currency. Now, it may, number one, become something else, such as a global currency. Could be the Chinese currency. It could be a new global currency. It could be that the world reserve currency is split up into 2 or 3 groups. It could become a basket of currencies. No one knows. But what looks almost imminent and sure that the U.S. dollar will no longer be the only world reserve currency. And it may not be a world reserve currency at all. People, before the U.S. dollar was the world reserve currency, it used to be the British pound. Right up until World War II. I think it was until after World War II that we became the world reserve currency. Before that, it was the British pound. The British pound was the world reserve currency. It was the most solid currency in the world. It was the world reserve currency. Now, that changed when they became insolvent. So it's not unusual for a currency. I mean, think of Britain, the empire of the world. The sun never sets on the British Empire. They have the world reserve currency, and they're all high and mighty, pip, chip, cheerio. And all of a sudden, somebody says, well, I'm really sorry, because you guys are bankrupt, we don't think the British pound is that solid. You are no longer the world reserve currency. We're going to make it the U.S. Britain had nothing. They couldn't change it, and they were screwed. So that's the first thing that's going to happen. The second thing that's going to happen is the oil is no longer going to be tied to the U.S. dollar. Folks, there was a secret meeting, and not one news organization reported this, but it is documented, just like the Bilderberg Group meetings are documented. This is documented. There was a meeting in the Middle East, actually in the Gulf states, with Japan, China, France, and a couple other nations. The U.S. wasn't even invited. The U.S. didn't even know about it. And this meeting with the Gulf states and Japan and with China and with France and some other nations, and not the U.S., this meeting was to discuss changing oil from being purchased in dollars to being purchased in a new basket currency. I mean, this, you have no idea the significant nature of this. But as I mentioned, the reason why these things are significant, but not the end of the world, and they are going to be cause some calamity, but the sun's not going to fall out of the sky. If you look at one of the worst case scenarios that happened in just the last 20 years was Yugoslavia. And what happened when? Do you realize that in order to go buy a loaf of bread in Yugoslavia in 1 week, I'll give you the equivalence here. This is what happened with the inflation. Today, a loaf of bread cost $1. A week later, it cost $23 gazillion. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. Actually, quadrillion is the right word. That's above $1 trillion. That's how fast the inflation rate happened in Yugoslavia. Now, if I said today a loaf of bread cost $1 and next week it costs $200, you'd go, oh my God, because you only have so many dollars. You didn't magically get more dollars. You only have the same amount in your bank account. You with me? But the prices went up 200%. But it didn't go up that. It went up from $1 to $1 quadrillion, which means nobody could even afford a loaf of bread, which means if they had $100,000, it was virtually worthless in a week. That's what happened in Yugoslavia. Now, what occurred?